Keeping your laser up to date allows you to get the most out of your machine. So let me show you how easy it is to update the firmware on your Emblaser Pro. Let's go. Now that we're at the Darkly Labs website, we have to go to Resources, Emblaser Pro, and under the Manuals, Firmware and Files, there is a Firmware tab. By clicking on that tab, it'll pull up a window that will have all the different firmwares that you need to update your Emblaser Pro. There are 5 files here, but the ones we're going to download are the ones with the FW at the end. I'm going to go in, download that file, go back, grab the next one, grab the last one, and now that we have all of those, we're going to jump back into LightBurn. So now that we've got that firmware updates, we're going to go into LightBurn and we're going to go up to the Emblaser Pro menu option, and then we select the Show Firmware Installed option. As you can see in the console window, it is now pulling some information from the machine, and what we're after is that final line that will tell us what type of firmware is installed in your machine. As I mentioned before, there are 3 different flavors of firmware to update your machine. As you can see on your screen now, the first firmware option is the controller or the main Emblaser Pro machine. The second one is the camera. And the third one is Wi-Fi. As I mentioned before, we're going to tackle the firmware for the whole machine first. And now that we have that information, we're going to go back to the Emblaser Pro menu at the top and go all the way down to Update Firmware. Once the window opens, we're going to select the correct firmware, which has the file name eProFW and then the firmware number. We're going to hit Open. And after a few seconds, in the console window within LightBurn, you're going to see the Emblaser Pro start the process of updating the firmware. Once it's sent the firmware update to the Emblaser Pro, you'll get a message here that says firmware transfer successful, and a window pops up that says restart your machine now. Firmware update takes around 5 to 10 seconds. So all I'm going to do is turn the machine off and turn it back on and allow it to finish the firmware update process. Now that the machine has powered up again, I'm keeping my eye on the console in LightBurn, and you can see within the console the message file run completed. For all intents and purposes, we've just updated the firmware within the Emblaser Pro, but I'm going to check it out. I want to make sure that we've done this properly. So I'm going to go back up to the Emblaser Pro menu, and I'm going to go and select that Show Firmware Installed again so I can compare. Now that we can see the different versions of firmware that's installed, you can see that we now have Firmware Con or FWCon 2.2.1675. If we look all the way up the top, you can also see that the previous version was 2.2.1661. So we know we're on the latest version of firmware for the Emblaser Pro machine. Awesome. We're now going to go and update the camera firmware, and we're going to repeat the same process all over again. This time I'm selecting the camera firmware. The console window opens so I can see what's going on. I have the message firmware transfer successful, and the window pops up saying restart your machine now. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to cycle the power off and then back on, and I'm going to keep my eye on the console window. After a few seconds, the message file run completed, but just like the first time, I'm going to go back to that Emblaser Pro menu option and hit Show Firmware Installed. And I'm going to double check to make sure that that firmware has successfully updated. And you can see here, the FW cam is 2.2.572, and the previous one was 2.2.567. So we are on the latest version of the firmware when we were making this video. So what do we do now? Well, you guessed it, we're going to update the Wi-Fi firmware. Go down and select the Update Firmware window. Select the final firmware that we've been able to download, which is the Wi-Fi firmware. and hit open. Keep your eye on the console and make sure that the firmware transfer is successful. Our favorite message comes up again. It says restart your machine now. Firmware update may take up to 5 to 10 seconds. Cycle the power off, then back on again. And keeping an eye on the console window, you can see the message that the update was successful. In this case, we've actually gotten a few different messages that came up, all about values. I'm not going to worry about that at all. That's something that I'm sure Darkly Labs is well aware of. But what I'm going to do now is actually check that that firmware update has been installed. All in all, this whole process from downloading the firmware, connecting to the Emblaser Pro, and updating the different firmwares available took less time than setting up a job in LightBurn. And that's it. Updating your firmware is easy, and now you don't even have to leave LightBurn to get it done. If you like this tutorial, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any other tutorials, tips, and tricks on how to use LightBurn and the Emblaser Pro. Until I see you next time, go make something amazing.